We'll call this meeting to order. We actually have to sign in. I don't have a sign in here. I'm not sure what's going on. There we go, present. Okay. If everyone would like to connect, that'd be great. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item C, identify possible conflicts of interest. Seeing none, move on to item D, public hearing petition to Wisconsin DOT for state and federal aid for improvements at Marshfield Municipal Airport. The public hearing is now open. Would anyone like to speak in public hearing?
Good evening, everyone. Jeff Geyer from the Marshfield Airport. I just want to say that I am in favor of these improvements that we are suggesting. The extent of character of the kind of improvements desired under the project are as follows: fuel farm enhancements, land acquisition in the runway approaches, conduct wildlife site visit, rehabilitate, reconstruct, relocate medium intensity approach lighting system with runway alignment indicator lights, reconstruct primary runway 1634, replace, rehabilitate runway taxiway lighting, reconstruct, relocate airfield electrical vault, remove old terminal building and adjacent ramp related to the hangar taxiway or snow removal equipment building construction, conduct aerial obstruction survey, clear runway approaches included for the instrument approach, extend runway 1634, included lighting, install, replace precision approach path indicators, reconstruct access road, construct parallel taxiway to runway 1634, construct snow removal equipment storage building, rehabilitate, reconstruct runway 523, rehabilitate, reconstruct taxiways, construct south hangar area including taxiways, construct hangars, seal coat surfaces, pavement maintenance, markings, runway and apron expansion, rehabilitate, reconstruct apron, install alternative fuel facilities for aircraft that may include but are not limited to electric and hydrogen. Install revenue generating electric car chargers in the parking lot, install alternative energy producing sources not limited to solar farms, panels, purchase of snow removal equipment, airport planning studies, airport environmental studies, airport layout plan updates, airport wildlife security fencing and gates, construct runway and identifier lights, runway 1634, rehabilitate, reconstruct, enhance wind socks and wind T indicator, clear and maintain all runway approaches as stated in Wisconsin Admin Code Trans 55 and any necessarily related work. Now that sounds like a lot, and I just want to say this is a wish list. But in order for us to get federal and state funds, this is what we have to do to go through these hoops to get it. So the airport committee helped come up with this plan of suggested ideas that we may want to pull the trigger on in the future. And the state does require that we do this every 5 to 6 years so they can plan for their CIP projects. So again, I just want to say I'm in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak in public hearing? Anyone else in public hearing? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Item E, public comment period correspondence. At this time, I'll recognize persons in attendance wishing to address the council. Upon recognition by me, persons may address the council first stating their name and address. Comments will be limited to no more than 5 minutes, and persons are asked to be respectful when addressing the council. No action will be taken regarding items not on the agenda. However, the council may take comments from the public under advisement. Please note that common council members will not respond to your comments or questions. Are there any public comments? Are there any public comments? See no public comments, we'll move on to item F. Approval of minutes from January 28th, 2025, regular meeting. We have a motion by Alderman Tompkins, second by Alderman Stauber. Any questions or concerns? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you. Staff updates.
Being remote this evening, I can't see if there's any department heads trying to get your attention, but I'm not aware of any staff updates this evening.
Anyone else in the room? Staff updates? Thank you. Mayor's comments? I'll just wish everybody a happy Valentine's Day on Friday, and actually Valentine's Day is every day, right? So love each other. Or if you really want to. If you don't want to do it anyway. Okay, item I, council comments. Any comments from the council? Seeing none, city administrators update.
Just one thing this evening, with the new administration in Washington, there's been a lot of discussion about grants and whether or not they're going to be held up or, delayed, not funded or whatever. So I just want you to know that I'm looking for more information from my peers from the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. I'll pass it along as I learn more. I suspect that this pause is just to make sure that the programs and the grants are appropriate for things like transportation and economic development. I'm not aware of any call to end any of these, but I'll keep you posted if there's anything that will affect the kind of things that we request money for here at the city of Marshfield.
Thank you, Administrator Barg. Item K, reports from commissions, boards, and committees. Alderman Tompkins.
Hi, I just want to give a report from the Utility Commission. So part of the Marshfield Utilities owns a very small portion of what's called the American Transmission Company, ATC. It's a company that doesn't make electricity, but it transmits the electricity to various locations. As part of owning a small portion of that, owners are required to give capital funds for both maintenance and for new projects. And so the ATC is sort of given a heads up to all the utility owners that they will be called upon to give significant multi-million-dollar contributions for their capital call. And so what that will do is it will affect how much dividend is sort of the surplus. In fact, what the projections are is that when we get our dividend in the spring that comes from 2024, we'll probably have the highest dividend that we've ever had, which will be about $800,000. But then after that, our dividend will be zero. And it will be zero for 5 years. That's the projection, but even further potentially. They just only look at 5 years. So that's just something for us as a council to think about, because we will get a lot of money, but then we're going to need to think about, do we spread this out over this 5 or 6 years, or does this, what do we do? But it's for the 205 fund, it's for economic development. So that's just an update for that.
Thank you, Natasha. Any other updates from anybody? Alderman Spiros?
Hi, this isn't really an update, but more of a comment. I wanted to commend Councilperson Tompkins. I had seen that she had gone and looked at the map for all the residents that lived in her neighborhood that still have lead pipes, and she made the effort of going around and speaking to all of her residents with those pipes, and I think that is really commendable.
Thank you. Thank you, Alderman Tompkins. Wonderful. Anyone else? Seeing none, item L, consent agenda, meeting minutes, reports. Okay, I don't see anything. I'm sorry, I just see this. I'm sorry. I can't get it. Motion by Giles, second by, I don't see it on my screen, so Jessica have to help me out a little here. Motion by Giles, second by Mr. Rigel. Are there any questions, comments? Seeing none, please vote. There we go, back online.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you. We can skip M because action on items removed. There were none from consent agenda. Item N, presentation, review of the city's stormwater management needs and the possibility of applying for a stormwater planning grant for funding to perform a stormwater feasibility study. Introduction by Josh Moritz, Acting Public Works Director. Presentation by John Strand Associates Incorporated. Gentlemen?
Hi, good evening. Thank you. The next two agenda items, letters N and O, kind of go hand in hand. I'm going to introduce John here in a minute. He gave a presentation a couple of years ago from our 2023 citywide stormwater management plan that laid out kind of a framework of the improvements we're going to need to make to meet DNR mandated total phosphorus reduction limits that were mandated to meet. So the discussion, it opens up about possibility of a stormwater utility again as a means to fund some of these improvements. So I'm going to turn it over to John here in a minute. He's going to give a background of where we were 2 years ago and kind of elaborate a little further on the concept of a stormwater utility. So John Linder from Strand Associates. Oh, there we go.
All right. All right. So as Josh said, I was here back in February of 23 talking about the citywide stormwater management plan and TMDL analysis that is a requirement of the city's stormwater permit with the DNR. Today, I've revised this a little bit with some stormwater utility basics information at the end, but I am going to do a summary, kind of walk through that presentation from 2 years ago, but not get in depth on anything really unless somebody asks. But we'll give you the overview of it. So what we talked about was an introduction, current updated stormwater program, the Wisconsin River Basin TMDL that Josh referred to that has some big requirements that are, the main impetus for some of the cost. We've got stormwater quality modeling that helps us on that, and then alternatives on how you might get in compliance with the total maximum daily load. Some recommendations, and then I've added the stormwater utility feasibility study information at the end. The main thing here is you've got a permit. You did an original plan in 2014, and that showed you in compliance with a TSS reduction of 20% at the time. The new modeling or the new requirements are over here, the TP, which is total phosphorus reduction for the different reaches that are defined in the total maximum daily load from DNR, ranging from 77 to about 81% total phosphorus reduction, which are pretty high. This is a look at what that permit is on the left side, and then the permit conditions in bold there are what we dealt with during that 2023 stormwater plan. Main one being stormwater quality management, having the highest, cost effect there. We did have a grant there from the DNR, Urban Endpoint Source Grant, that funded 50% of that cost, as you can see the numbers there. So that was nice. That helped with the funding of it. This is a look at all of those different permit conditions with some information on each one. I'm not going to go through that. I did last time, but it's a lot in that report that you could take a look at. This is the Wisconsin River TMDL document on the left. It was approved by EPA on July 9th of 2020, and of course Marshfield on the star in the middle graphic. That's where you sit within the Wisconsin River Basin. And then this is the reaches, our watersheds that the TMDL defines, reach 84, 85, 275, 331 and 307 are the ones that you guys are in. This is a graphic of the stormwater quality modeling for total phosphorus, or TP. On the left is as if there were no controls in place, and on the right is with controls, and the darker are the ones that would be considered hotspots, and you'd like try to have new stormwater BMPs or wet ponds and things like that to help treat those areas. This is a look at the modeling, and the thing to look at here on the left is the pollutant, TSS and TP. You are in compliance with the TSS requirement as you look across to the right, and TSS is another word for sediment. TP, again, total phosphorus. The important thing here is looking at the far right in what we call a TMDL pollutant reduction gap of 2,351 pounds of total phosphorus that is needed to be, it's a gap that needs to be closed, I guess, is one way to put it. So you have to do projects to get there. This slide was regarding all the different stormwater BMPs that are out there, the bioretention basins, the wet ponds. They were designed and put in, many years ago in some cases, and the DNR is looking for those to be maintained to make sure that they're still performing as originally designed. So that's a program that the city should be taken care of, and there's a cost to that. In terms of alternatives analysis and how we come into TMDL compliance, I guess you want to come down to stormwater quality modeling, and we're done with that. And then it's water quality treating, watershed adaptive management, and design and construction of BMPs within the city. We've looked at all these within the stormwater plan, talked with the wastewater treatment plant on a couple of the options. And at this point, what we'll see the rest of the way is design and construction of BMPs within the city, and some level of water quality trading are going to be necessary to gain compliance. This is a map of the city with the different stormwater BMPs or features that we looked at to see what made the most sense, was most cost effective for the city to pursue. This was alternative 2 that seemed to be the most cost effective that the city is embarking on implementing, I should say. And you can see there's a number of wet detention basins there, mostly on the left 3/4. There was some vacuum street sweeping and increased street sweeping that I think has already been implemented. It relies on 20 years of redevelopment to get some level of total phosphorus control. We also did TP leaf collection credit that the city's getting credit for the leaf collection operations in the fall. And then the water quality trading out in agricultural lands kind of finishes off the required features, I guess. Water quality trading, like I said, is one of the options that is out there to try to get cost-effective compliance. And that's going out on agricultural land and looking at field buffers and cover crops and other things that you can do to keep the soil on the land. And there's a lot more to talk about there, but that's the basics. There's watershed adaptive management. That is something that the treatment plant would have to initiate. And at this point, through discussions with the treatment plant and all the pros and cons of this particular compliance option, it's not really deemed feasible, and the treatment plant has gone down the path of making improvements, there. And so we continue on, and really what this is, if you look at alternative 2 up there, it's 9 structural BMPs, like wet ponds, 3 non-structural BMPs, and again, best management practice is what that stands for, and then some ag water quality trading at about a cost of $17.5 million, 20-year net present worth at $373 per pound. So that's kind of a number we can talk about. This is just some recommendations that are in the report regarding all the different components of that stormwater permit. And some more recommendations here, the main one being kind of that second bullet, constructed BMPs, and trying to tap into DNR urban non-point source grants for construction.
I'm sorry, John, we need to pause for 5 minutes. We lost our ability to communicate with the folks online. I apologize.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Otherwise, please enter the meeting password followed by pound. You are in the meeting now. There are 5 participants in the meeting.
Steve, can you hear us now?
Yeah, you're good.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we're on this slide here, was saying the second bullet down is one to kind of note to try to tap into more DNR urban non-point source grant funds for construction of some of these stormwater BMPs, of which you did back in April of 24 for a Brame Park wet pond. It was a switch from the Mill Creek one. Made better sense after we looked at it for the first one. And then the last in bold, considering a DNR urban non-point source planning grant for a stormwater utility feasibility study. Now we're looking at April 15th, 2025 for a grant application due date. This is the TMDL implementation plan of how you would implement the different BMPs and in which year. And so it's all nice and organized for Josh to discuss with me over time. And the main requirement that the permit has is that by 2030, they want you to close 10% of that gap. And so that's about 235 pounds of PP. So that's the way this implementation plan is laid out. DNR's looking for that. And so just a compliance requirement. With that, that was the end of that presentation. If there are any questions, otherwise I can jump to the stormwater utility part of it next.
Any questions from the council? Seeing none, go for it, John.
So the things I was going to talk about here are stormwater utility basics, stormwater utilities in Wisconsin, stormwater utilities that are more local, a potential stormwater utility budget, some next steps, benefits of a stormwater utility, and then implications of MS4 noncompliance. So your current charges are based on assessed property value. As such, your stormwater budget is part of your city's overall budget. Under a stormwater utility, the charges are based on the amount of impervious area, and the city's stormwater budget becomes a standalone stormwater utility budget. And how, I guess the theory here is developed land is a primary urban source of stormwater runoff. So the graphic on the top left is undeveloped land. It rains, the water wants to soak in. On the right, you put parking lots and rooftops in, and that water has to be dealt with by storm sewer, detention ponds, other things, and incurring certain costs. And the second bullet there, the rate structure is based on impervious area, whereas in a stormwater or a water utility, you'd have a meter. The meter here is the impervious area delineation on a given parcel. So as an example, well, I guess first of all, the stormwater fee is seen as a fair and equitable based on runoff from impervious area. And the typical methodology that's out there is the equivalent runoff unit, or ERU. And if you look at the example, single family residential property here, and you delineate that, in this case, it was 3,100 square feet on a home that you might live in, which would be defined as one ERU in a community. And then in this case, this would be an industry of some sort with 1.4 million square feet, which would be 465 ERUs, the math being 1.4 million divided by that 3,100. The typical way to charge is on a utility bill. The one there is from Whitewater from a number of years ago, but to show that. So within Wisconsin, there are currently 123 stormwater utilities. The link there would take you to 3.5 pages of stormwater utilities. I have just one of those here, and I just kind of took some rough ranges on the ERU size. on this list from about 1,000 to 7,000 square feet. And then the cost per ERU per year range, again, this would be 20 to 244. So this would be a cost for like a single family residence that is showing up on this list. And I guess if I were to average in there, the average is probably $50 to $100 per year, somewhere in there. But you can take a look at that, and it's kind of all over the board. And then locally, I just wanted to pull some out that were somewhat near Marshfield, noting you guys have the 1,819 population for 2020. So I think the closest one is probably Stevens Point and Weston Rapids, the bottom three. And you can see their ERU sizes here, when they were created, and then what they're charging. And this was in 2022, so it might be a little different. Higher, maybe, if anything. Regarding a stormwater budget for Marshfield, we have a table 603 in the 2023 plan. It includes the stormwater quality permit related costs only. It doesn't include, let's just say, staff time to administer a utility or equipment or things like that. But we would be updating that as part of a stormwater utility feasibility study. This particular table along the bottom in the bold here has just some projected costs for just the stormwater quality side, ranging from 122,000 up to 1.596 in 2050. And Josh wanted me to note that that's a capital cost bonded type of arrangement for the stormwater BMP, so you don't see the big hit on a construction cost. It's a 20-year payback type of thing. So those costs would likely be higher once you updated your budget to cover everything you want to cover under stormwater utility if you're going down that path. All right, so this is a pretty important slide. The top left, the first thing to note is 2013 Wisconsin Act 20 kind of changed on the way in which a municipality could actually do a stormwater utility. So they said, if you shift the cost to utility from a general fund, you need to then reduce the levy an equivalent amount. And to get around that, if you don't want to reduce the levy, then you have to pass a referendum in the community.
I'm sorry, John, we lost him again. So Jess is going to work her magic.
All right.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. Enter your participant ID followed by, please enter the meeting password followed by pound. You are in the meeting now. There are 5 participants in the meeting.
Can you hear me, Steve?
I can, Jessica.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll start at the top here on this one again. The important thing to note is 2013 Wisconsin Act 20 affected the way communities could actually implement the utility, with the first bullet being if you shift the cost to utility from the general fund, you need to reduce the levy an equivalent amount. And then secondly, if you want to get around that and have no reduction of levy, you would have to pass a referendum in the community. So a little bit of history in Marshfield on the stormwater utility. Josh had that in his memo. There was a 2003 stormwater utility feasibility study and an attempt to implement that utility in 2004. And then really what has changed since 2004, there was a 2014 stormwater plan that showed a conformance with the DNR MS4 20% PSS requirement, which partially made the case probably that you didn't have to do anything because you're in compliance. And so the need for a utility at the time was maybe less. However, significant development changes the stormwater utility analysis today. the Wisconsin River TMDL has very high TP reduction requirements, and our 2023 citywide stormwater management plan TMDL analysis provides a plan for implementation with the costs that you saw. That would make maybe a utility something that you guys want to consider. The graphics on the right, again, there was that 2023 plan. The city is embarking on that plan or that implementation plan with increased street sweeping. That's been started. The Brame Park Wet Pond, which is currently under design, could be constructed next year. And we're here to talk today, I think, about the stormwater utility feasibility study update. And the components or scope of services that you get once you start doing that is you're going to update the proposed budget. You're going to estimate the impervious areas and potential revenue for range of rates. You're going to look at the potential impacts to the customers, and that work is fundable by a DNR Urban On-Point Source Planning Grant competitive process. Should that show that it makes sense for you guys to go forward, you could go down the path of another grant to do stormwater utility implementation. There's a fair amount of work that has to be done there. The scope of services of which would be on the right, a summary of that. And so there's just all these things that you need to do to get a utility operational. Some of the next steps, and this is really taking a look at, it's kind of a slow process, right? So the first line there, the Brame Park Dry to Wet Pond, we applied for a grant back here in April 24, got that, are designing in the blue here now, construction in 2026. What we're talking about here is a stormwater utility feasibility study with a April 2025 grant application, if successful, funding the work for that are in orange, or planning for that in orange, 26. Meanwhile, there's another opportunity to apply for a grant for the next stormwater BMP on the list, which would be in 2026. And if you continued that process, you'd have design in 27, construction in 2028 of the next stormwater BMP. Stormwater utility implementation is at the bottom here. So as you're getting done with the feasibility study, you could do another grant here in 2027 for implementation in 2028. And likely, if it all went right, I guess, you'd maybe start sending bills in January of 2029. So it's kind of a elongated project, especially if you're relying on grants to try to do it. And there are these grants here. They've been good for a lot of communities in Wisconsin to try to help out. All right, so stormwater utility benefits. It provides an equitable, stable, dedicated revenue source for stormwater-related projects. There is a credit policy out there that you could do or tailor to the community that could reduce rates for non-residential customers. And then the revenue source allows planning and paying for stormwater quality improvements, as well as flood control to the extent you have issues there. I understand there's, you have some level of that. So benefits of completing stormwater quality projects would be, first of all, regulatory compliance, but then water quality, ecology, and fisheries improvements in, rivers, streams, lakes, creeks for you guys, Mill Creek and McMillan Creek, reduction of erosion in channels and creeks, quality of life and aesthetics improvements, resiliency to climate change, and it promotes green infrastructure. Benefits of completing flood control projects, reducing potential lawsuits, replacing aging infrastructure, reducing flooding, and ensure emergency vehicle access and preserve property values. And lastly, implications of noncompliance with MS4 permit requirements. We get asked this sometime. Typically, on the short term, DNR will work with community on path compliance. I've never seen anybody go to the long term, which is if a community elects noncompliance, DNR can refer you to the U.S. Department of Justice, potentially subjecting the community to significant fines. Again, I've never seen that even be there. It's just what I'm told from the DNR. So with that, I guess I open it up for questions and discussion.
Alderman Stauber?
John, thank you for the presentation. Could you go back 2 slides? I want to see where you've broken out the potential lawsuits. What would that look like? What would give us a scenario?
You know, if it's city's infrastructure that's inadequately sized and it floods a home, you know, there's a potential for stuff like that. That's all I would say.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And one other question, if I could. You probably have the list of all the communities that have stormwater utilities memorized. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And you said it was 3 pages. And I'm wondering about the management of these stormwater utilities. So in Marshfield, we have a city-owned water and electric facility. Would that responsibility fall on the utility, or how would that play out in a community like ours? And I guess what I'm asking is, you know, comparable communities that have municipally owned utilities, how do they manage?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how that would work. The ones that I've worked on have been just right through the city. So we'd have to talk, I guess, more about that, and
Okay.
maybe Josh would know. I don't know.
And that said, what is the staffing requirement to maintain that? Would it just fall under Josh's team, for example, and existing staff would take care of it or manage it?
That's how I see it happening. That's how we've been doing it, more or less. It's a heavy lift. I mean, we've started down the road of implementing this already with the Frame Park construction and some of the things that John mentioned, the street division's already doing with street sweeping. A lot of it's already being done. It's in my opinion, it's more of a funding source to spending on these EMPs as they're.
Thank you.
Alderman Tompkins?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So what I'm hearing from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, let's pretend that my house pays in my taxes $50 of my tax bill is paying for our stormwater stuff right now.
I apologize, Natasha.
Oh,
The sound is off again.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. Enter your participant ID. Please enter the meeting password. You are in the meeting now. There are 5 participants in the meeting.
Steve, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can, thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Tompkins?
okay. So this is really simplistic, and I apologize, Jennifer, because this is going to drive you crazy. But okay, let's pretend that in my tax bill, $50 pays for stormwater management every year. And if we do the stormwater utility, we would have to lower the tax levy. So my tax bill goes down by $50. But I'll then get a utility bill. But I'm thinking my utility bill is going to be lower because now we're sharing the costs across all the nonprofits in the city as well. So potentially my utility bill will be $45 instead of the $50 that I'm paying for taxes. And my tax bill will be lower. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, there would be a shift from typically residential cost would go down because of the parcels with lots of impervious area would be paying more. So how it works in the city of Marshfield exactly is the analysis that we do to show the shift of that.
So to me, it sounds like it's a win for residents who own homes for sure. And it also spreads it out over, we have really large nonprofits in town who have lots of roofs and lots of parking lots to sort of help us keep this regulation. And then it's also a stable funding. So even as the cost of doing all this stuff goes up and our taxes can't go up, at least we can keep on having a stable funding source because that rate can go up. So to me, that's a win-win for people. That's just my comments.
Thank you for the comment.
Alderman Stauber?
So tracking with you, Tompkins, it could be a win-win, but then what comes to mind for me is what we recently did with the fire protection fee. And we knew there would be winners and losers because of the way we changed how we collect for fire protection. And we didn't really name particular businesses, but the expectation was that manufacturers, for example, would be a loser.
I'm sorry, Russ, I have to interrupt you again.
Broke it.
Yep.
I think it's Barb. Who invited him to the meeting?
Something's in the air and we're not sure what it. Modern technology.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
Yep.
Enter your participant ID followed by, please enter the meeting password. You are in the meeting now. There are 5 participants in the meeting.
Steve, can you hear me now?
Again, Jessica, thank you.
Okay, Russ?
Okay, thank you. So I'll pick up kind of where I left off. So for the resident, it would be a net win if we implemented a stormwater utility. And I would like to make sure we're not piling on to manufacturers or people or organizations that have been hit especially hard with the fire protection fee change. So I think before I could support stormwater utility, it'd be nice to see like what we requested of the utility. Bring us a few examples, unnamed, manufacturing, commercial, residential, retail, just to see what the impact might be. And I'm not sure how difficult that would be, but it would at least help me understand or help me support it, or maybe want to postpone it for a time after the dust settles, if you will, on the fire protection fee.
If I could speak to that, I look back for the 2002 or 3 stormwater feasibility study that was done. I can't find the entire report, but I did find several documents about it. And they did this exact same illustration you're talking about. They actually named names, but they looked at different uses of land and came up with how much their tax bill may be reduced and how much the stormwater utility would maybe take that place. And you're right, there's winners or losers. So, but it's something, I guess, it'd be hard to come up with initially, but I could refer back to that study, or, we take this step 1 and then dig into some of those.
Or if you can use the logic that Natasha put on the table, maybe it's a net win, but because we're bringing in not-for-profit organizations now, the overall benefit would be good for the community.
Yeah, I mean, think of it like water utility. You're being charged for the water you're consuming, and this In this case, you're being charged for the amount of stormwater runoff you are generating. So I think it's more equitable that way, and it does bring in the tax exempt and nonprofit. So
Thank you.
Any other questions from any other Alderman Field? Seeing none, thank you for the presentation. John?
You're welcome. I'm going to stop sharing. Yep.
And that was for information only, so we will go on to item O, request to authorize to execute a task order with Strand Associates Incorporated for services related to presentation, submission of the stormwater planning grant application presented by Josh Moretz, Acting Public Works Director.
thank you. As I said before, that agenda item and letter O here, they pretty much go hand in hand. So rather than read through a pretty lengthy memo I put together, that basically echoes a lot of what John said. What we're looking for at this time is to, Strand has offered to prepare the grant for the stormwater planning grant to do the application. And so I'm looking for support for doing that. And, it's at the council's discretion, but the recommendation would be to pursue a task order with Strand Associates for grant application services for a cost not to exceed $9,900.
We have a motion on the floor by Alderman Tompkins, second by Alderman Giles. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item P, second reading of ordinance number 1526, amending chapter 25 of Marshfield Municipal Code, construction site erosion control, presented by Harold Wolfgram, City Attorney.
Well, this is your second reading on this. As I mentioned last time, this is a pretty comprehensive change to the overall code, but the purpose was to really bring it up to current standards in regard to that. It was run through the Board of Public Works, certainly reviewed by and endorsed by the Public Works Department. If you have any questions, you can let me know, but if there's specifics, we'd probably address them through the Board of Public Works.
We have a motion by Alderman Varsho, second by Alderman Weigel. Any questions, comments for Attorney Wolfgram? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you. Item Q, request to approve budget resolution number 04-2025, increasing wastewater capital expenditures for the Northeast Pump Station Rehabilitation Project, presented by Jennifer Solinsky, Finance Director.
As stated in your memo, we have just approved to accept the construction contract on our Northeast Pump Station. The reason I'm bringing this budget resolution forward is that for the budget years of...
I'm sorry, Jennifer. Yep. Yes, sir. Steve's too.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. Enter your participant ID followed by, please enter the meeting password followed by pound. You are in the meeting now. There are 5 participants in the meeting.
Well, for a long time, I'm sick, but
We're
I
back,
feel
Steve.
guilty too. All right, thank you.
Okay, Jennifer?
Okay, so the reason for this budget of resolution is that we have been budgeting for this project for years 2023 through 2025, and that total budget during that time period is a little over $2.8 million. But contractual services for the same time period are going to be just under 2.6 million, but they don't align in the same years, meaning budget and anticipated expenditures. So you can think of this as a carry forward of the budget that has been previously allocated into 2025 so that we are in alignment. And I just also want to point out that the funding source for this Northeast Pumping Station project is the wastewater utility fees.
Unfortunately, we lost them again.
Okay.
We gotta try to figure something out here.
Actually, I'm gonna make an executive decision. I think we just need to move forward without these folks.
We can't be doing this every 5 minutes.
Correct. So I
We
guess
have 8 people here.
the
so-
best thing to do is bring them back online and let them know that we're gonna move ahead without them. Steve has a couple things on the list, so we'll have to just forego those items for this evening.
Well, the one of the items on the list, myself and
Right, yes, sir, yep.
And,
Item R will have to be, removed, and then the.
Ashley is
yeah.
here. We could take care of that one.
Okay, sounds great. Okay. Okay, go ahead, Jennifer. Thank you.
Okay, so as a result, staff is recommending the approval of Budget Resolution 05-2025, which would increase the wastewater utility fund budget by $432,000 for the Northeast Pumping Station Rehabilitation Project.
We have a motion by Alderman Fires, second by Alderman Tompkins. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, please vote. That motion passes. Thank you. Item R, request to approve budget resolution number 05-2025, increasing the Fund 205 Economic Development budget for 2025 for consulting services related to the West 2nd Street redevelopment plan presented by Jennifer Solinsky. Thank you, Jennifer.
Of course. Part of this budget resolution is kind of the same carry forward variety as it relates to the Economic Development Fund and our contract with Vanderwall for the Phase 2 portion of the Weinbrenner project. It's really a timing issue. We had budgeted a portion of the expenditures in 24 and in 25 without knowing exactly when those expenditures would land. And then there is also a new component that we are requesting a resolution for, and that would be for the appraisals of the current police station and the Weinbrenner building itself as they relate to development of the 2nd Street corridor. So with that, staff is recommending approval of Budget Resolution 05-2025 in the Economic Development Fund of $28,000 in order to cover the expenditures relating to Phase 2 of the plan and appraisals of those buildings.
We have a motion by Alderman Tompkins, second by Alderman Giles. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, please vote. That motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item S, request to approve budget resolution number 06-2025, transferring $6,000 from general fund contingency to the fire department budget to cover certain expenses related to an campaign for April 1st referendum for public safety staffing presented by Everett Mueller, Fire Chief.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the Common Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present Budget Resolution 06-2025. The $6,000 outlined in this resolution will be allocated for educational materials, room rentals, and other associated expenses related to the April 1st, 2025 referendum. Before the meeting, I distributed the flyer that will be printed and mailed to 8,808 city Marshfield addresses. Additionally, you'll find the frequently asked question flyer, which will be printed in-house, displayed in city-owned buildings, and shared during the informational sessions. Lastly, included is a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that will be used for the informational sessions. So the flyer would be the one that basically is a 2-page, real simple flyer. That one's going to be going out to each one of the addresses. That's going to be an EDMS flyer. And I will give David Bellerstein a lot of credit. He went out and really worked on that to get that price down. This resolution reflects the collaborative effort between city staff, and I'd like to take a moment just to thank the following staff members: Steve Bark, City Administrator; Jennifer Solinsky, Finance Director; Sarah Dressel, Human Resources Director; Jessica Schiffrel, City Clerk; and Tom Lukes, Communication Director; and David Bellerstein, the Communication Specialist. And the many members of the fire department have worked hard on this referendum to get this up and running, to make sure everything comes together. Together, staff have worked diligently to minimize the cost. As a comparison, the last referendum relied on an outside firm and incurred a cost of approximately $43,000. This is substantially lower. I'd like to take an opportunity to personally thank the Common Council for your continued support of this important referendum. And at this time, I'd respectfully request your approval of Budget Resolution 06-2025. I'd be happy to answer any questions that members of the Common Council may have.
We have a motion by Alderman O'Reilly, second by Alderman Giles. Any questions, comments from the council? Alderman Tompkins.
I just wanted to say that I love on the back where it says, what happens if we vote yes? What happens if we vote?
Oh,
I thought that was really good. So.
Good. Yeah, that one we went through and kind of worked on a lot of different things on that. So thank you very much.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, please vote. That motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Item T, request to approve resolution number 2025-07, petitioning the Secretary of the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, DOT, for state federal aid for improvements at Marshfield Municipal Airport, presented by Jeff Geyer, Airport Manager, Marshfield Municipal Airport.
Good afternoon, everyone. 2025-07 is petitioning the Bureau of Aeronautics for airport improvements at the Marshfield Airport. In order for us to receive state and federal aid, instead of petitioning the Federal Aviation Administration, we have to petition the state because we are a block grant state, which means that the Bureau of Aeronautics receives the money from the FAA and then they distribute it to everyone that's petitioned. The items that we have on our petition that I mentioned earlier in the public hearing, we won't necessarily do all those items. That's just a magic wish list that we have there in case we decide we do want to do something. Of course, we certainly want to do some of the projects on there, like reconstruct runway 1634. That's our big project coming up in the next couple of years. And of course, we certainly want federal and state aid to help that with us because it's going to be 90% project federal aid, 5% project state, and 5% project from the city if we use certain funds that the FAA provides us. Some of that might be a little bit better funding because it's amazing what they come up some days, like with the bill infrastructure, that's 2.5% that we only have to come up with. I also want to point out with this petition, the other thing that we have with it is grant assurances. And what those are is that the state and federal government requires that we maintain the airport a minimum of 20 years because we're receiving federal and state funds. If for some reason the city decides to close the airport, they are obligated to pay back everything they've received federal and state funding back to the federal government, state government. So just so you're aware, the grant assurances. Any questions?
We have a motion on the floor by Alderman O'Reilly, second by Alderman Giles. Any questions or comments for Jeff? Seeing none, please vote. That motion passes. Thank you. Item U, request to approve the selection of the developer to work with the city on redevelopment of the current Weinbrenner facility located at 305 West 3rd Street. Was to be introduced by Steve Barg, presented by Dave LaFontaine. And we have another member of the committee, Ashley Winch, who will give us the information. Good evening, Ashley.
Good evening. I don't look like Dave or Steve.
No, you do not. Yeah.
So they owe me. I, first of all, just want to say I think the city should feel really good about having really 4 qualified, bona fide developers that had submitted RFQs for the project. I learned a ton about low-income housing tax credits, which I never knew I was going to need to know or nor I wanted to know, but very, very cool process. I thought I'd share and recap our top 2 candidates. So while all 4 that we interviewed, I thought were capable, we definitely had 2 that stood out amongst the rest. So the first one was Gorman and Company, which I believe the city is familiar with from other projects. They had a strong proposal. You can really tell that they have extensive experience in these types of projects. They seem to be, what a highlight for me is they seem to be open to more development within the 2nd Street corridor. They are vertically integrated, which I think would help progress continue to move along. They had an idea about covered parking, which I think the entire committee, nobody else kind of presented that, and I think that was really a high point for us. They seemed to have a good handle on how they would finance the project, agreed that they would use local subcontractors wherever possible. Some of the other points was that it was all senior housing, and it seemed a little bit more cookie cutter, which was made it a little unsure on the partnership piece with the city. I'll move on to Jay Jeffers, which was our other one in the top 2. You could also tell that they're very experienced with these types of projects and definitely has the ability to secure financing for the projects. I thought the gentleman who came in and their community development director gave extremely great advice and ultimately felt like this would be the best partner for the city that way. I really appreciated the amount of research they did about the historic area beyond the Weinbrenner building itself. And I think they would care greatly to honor and pay homage to the history of the area and community in itself. They had an affordable housing for family component, which I think hits a little bit more on the community need as opposed to just all senior housing. They also were agreeable to using local subcontractors wherever possible. They had extensive experience in managing environmental concerns. So they did mention that in one of the recent projects, they had a cyanide pit that they were able to handle, which I thought was pretty significant. And they treated the building as a piece of an overall campus, which I think is really important as the city continues to explore and develop that Second Street corridor. So I think if the city wants the building to be that anchor and that downtown gem, like this is definitely a partner to do it. Our committee agreed on the recommendation for Jay Jeffers as a representative of the CDA. Our CDA had a special meeting today and approved the recommendation. I don't know if you were provided the additional bullet points that Steve was going to mention today. I do have them if you want me to read them because he's not here, or
Certainly. That'd be great, Ashley. Thank
okay,
you.
I can do that. So Steve's notes from Jay Jeffers' selection was they're Wisconsin-based with considerable experience in the state, very experienced with state grant and tax credit programs, significant history of adaptive reuse of historic buildings, demonstrated track record of securing project financing, successful background in mixed-use redevelopments, open to non-residential components, i.e. limited commercial/community space, understands the importance of recognizing Weinbrenner history in a meaningful way, sees the bigger picture in terms of complementing the Second Street corridor overall, has a director of community impact to work closely with the city and its stakeholders, and is committed to a timeline that is reasonable and prudent for the completion of the project is what he noted.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Steve. We have a motion on the floor by Alderman Tompkins, second by Alderman Varsho. Any questions, comments? Alderman Stauber?
Thanks for your work. Varsho, thanks for your work on this as well. Probably was fun and learning experience. My question has to do with the alignment of fund availability and the true needs in Marshfield. What sense did you get when you were doing the evaluation as far as, I sensed a lot of emphasis on affordable housing, and the objective of the developers to capture those funds align with our true needs in market. The question.
Well, I definitely think the affordable housing component hits a need in our community, and I think the family proposal for the affordable housing hit harder for the need as opposed to the senior living. From my I don't have a ton of financial experience in development, but from what I gathered from all of the presentations that I don't know if the redevelopment is feasible without the low-income housing tax credits and the historic preservation taxes. I feel like if that wasn't an option to help with the financing, we would see less interest, or we would have developers potentially not be interested anymore.
Yeah, and maybe I should have framed my question with one of the expectations, at least the one that I had, was you go to major metropolitan areas like Milwaukee, Minneapolis, you see high-end housing in downtowns. And I was hoping that we might see some of that here. Wasn't to be, apparently.
It's very hard to take a building like that around this area and put that type of high-end housing. A lot of their thought is revolved around the, low income is a different type of word from what, it's really not. Still $900 for a two-bedroom apartment is not typically low. But the thought is you take even the family ones are great, and this is like an 85-15 split. So there's going to be 15 like market apartments in there as well. But 15%. But you take some of those other housing units, and yeah, it'll be great for some families, but it'll be great for a retired couple that wants to sell their house, to a young couple in town, give us some affordable housing there, move into some of these apartments, and then that young couple moves into their first house and they refurbish a little bit. They sell the house, move into a higher house in town. So it kind of gets the ball rolling on our affordable housing. There's a lot of houses, I would assume, within this community that you have an elderly couple that might want to sell it, but hasn't sold it yet. To move into an apartment like this, you don't have to mow your lawn, you don't have to snow blow, you don't have to do stuff like that. But the affordable, all 5 of the presentations we have, the affordable housing credit was a big portion of it, as well as the historical preservation credit.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, please vote. That motion passes. Thank you, Ashley, for stepping in. And you do not look like Dave or like Steve. Item F, suggested items for future agendas. Alderman Tompkins?
Thank you. I have to find it in my notes. I'm wondering, we haven't had a engineer for a while, and now we don't have, our engineering department's getting lower and lower and lower. And so I'm just wondering if we could have a report on recruiting efforts for our engineers, the cost of how much work we're doing for contracting in that department, if we could at all have a cost for delays because we don't have engineers. It would just be good to have a presentation about that.
Any items? Seeing none, are we allowed to adjourn to, and Steve? Okay. So we have no other items. So we will adjourn to closed session under Wisconsin Statute, Chapter 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Request to amend development agreement in TIF District 13. We have a motion by Alderman O'Reilly, second by Alderman Tompkins. Please vote to go into closed session. We are in closed session. Thank you. Item Y, action on matters discussed in closed session.
So I move that the city administrator work with our attorney to make the requested modifications of the contract.
We have a second by Alderman Stauber. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, please vote. And that motion passes. And does somebody like to motion to adjourn? Alderman O'Reilly, second by Alderman Giles. And everyone, please vote to adjourn the meeting. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.